The air in the lakeside cabin, usually thick with the aroma of Mom's apple pie and Dad's booming laughter, felt different this year. A subtle tension hummed beneath the surface, a discordant note in our annual family reunion. Liam. That's me tried to ignore it, focusing on the mesmerizing dance of sunlight on the water. But then my sister Clara, the perennial golden child, the one who could seemingly do no wrong in our parents' eyes, sashayed over, her expression a practiced blend of sweetness and urgency. "Liam, darling brother," she began, her voice dripping with honey, "I have this incredible opportunity." It always started like this, an incredible opportunity that invariably required my financial intervention. This time, it was the Bloom Room, a high-end floral boutique Clara was convinced would finally launch her into entrepreneurial stardom. She fluttered her eyelashes, gesturing vaguely towards a glossy brochure filled with impossibly perfect bouquets. Dad joined us, his arm slung around Clara's shoulders, his gaze fixed on me with that familiar expectation. "Your sister needs a little help getting started, son," he announced, his tone brooking no argument. Mom hovered nearby, her expression a silent plea. The number Clara casually dropped, a staggering $180,000 loan co-signature, hung in the air like a guillotine blade. A cold dread washed over me. This wasn't just a small favor. This was a financial anchor that threatened to drag me down, with her inevitable shipwreck. I thought of the years of bailing Clara out of her incredible opportunities, the failed online jewelry store, the disastrous attempt at a mobile dog grooming service. Each time, I had been the reluctant safety net, the silent ATM. Dad's words echoed the familiar family mantra. Family supports each other. But in our family, support had always been a one-way street, with me perpetually on the giving end. I remembered the down payment I'd helped them with, on their suburban house after their previous investment went south. "Not like this, Dad," I finally said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. The festive atmosphere around us seemed to freeze. Forks clattered onto plates. Mom's gaze darted between Dad and me, a flicker of unease in her eyes. Clara, however, merely offered a practiced pout. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken history. Years of Clara's impulsive ventures, funded by my increasingly strained finances. The time her vintage car needed extensive repairs. My credit card took the hit. The countless emergencies that somehow always landed on my doorstep with an outstretched hand. "After all we've done for you, Liam," Dad began, his face starting to flush a familiar shade of red. That stung. What had they done for me, besides cultivate a sense of obligation and drain my bank account? Clara's lower lip trembled, a performance I'd seen countless times. "You never believed in me, Liam," she accused, her voice laced with theatrical tears. Mom chimed in softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's your sister, Liam. Please, sister." The word felt hollow. The sister who partied through university while I worked 2 jobs to help pay the bills. The sister whose recklessness always had me picking up the pieces. The sister who took and took, leaving a trail of IOUs I knew would never be honored. I looked at their faces, a tableau of entitled expectation. In that moment, a cold clarity washed over me. They didn't see a son, a brother. They saw a resource. The family reunion continued, but for me, the festive veneer had shattered. Dad pressed, his voice rising in volume, the lawyer threat now hanging heavy in the air. "Sign the papers, Liam. It's family." Clara sniffled dramatically, dabbing at her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. Mom's pleas became more insistent, her voice laced with a desperate edge. But something had shifted within me. The years of resentment had finally coalesced into a steely resolve. "No," I said, the word clear and firm, cutting through the emotional manipulation. The immediate aftermath was predictable. Dad's face contorted in rage. Clara's wails reached operatic levels. Mom wrung her hands, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. But I didn't engage. I simply stood up, a strange sense of calm washing over me amidst the storm. "I'm done," I stated, my gaze sweeping across their shocked faces. I turned and walked away, the lawyer threat echoing in my ears like a hollow promise. That night, sleep eluded me, but it wasn't the fear of legal repercussions that kept me awake. It was a newfound sense of clarity, a quiet rebellion brewing within. I thought about the frozen lake outside the cabin, its surface hard and unyielding. An idea began to form, cold and sharp. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight touched the horizon, I made a decision. The game had changed. The drive back home felt surreal. The familiar landscape blurred past the windows, but my mind was a whirlwind of calculations and preparations. Back in my quiet apartment, the silence was a welcome change from the cacophony of the reunion. My phone buzzed incessantly. Missed calls and frantic texts from Mom and Clara. "Liam, what have you done?" "You're being unreasonable." "Dad is furious." I stared at the screen, a detached observer of their escalating panic. Their world, built on the foundation of my compliance, was starting to crumble. I ignored them. My focus was elsewhere. For years, I had meticulously documented every financial transaction, every loan, every gift that had flowed from my account to theirs. Screenshots of Clara's tearful pleas for just a little more, Dad's casual assumptions of my financial support, Mom's guilt-tripping messages. They were all there, carefully archived. This wasn't a rash act of anger. It was a calculated move, years in the making. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my determined face. It was time to share my story. My fingers flew across the keyboard, crafting a carefully worded post for a popular anonymous confession forum. I changed names, dates, and specific amounts slightly to protect my anonymity while retaining the core truth of my experience. I titled it, "Am I the A-hole for finally cutting off my financially dependent family?" I attached a selection of the documented evidence, redacted screenshots of bank transfers, anonymized messages. I hit post and leaned back, a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation churning in my stomach. I expected a few responses, maybe some validation, maybe some criticism. What I didn't anticipate was the virtual wildfire that erupted. Within hours, my post had hundreds of comments, then thousands. Stories of similar family dynamics flooded. The thread, tales of siblings taking advantage, parents enabling toxic behavior, the crushing weight of financial obligation. I wasn't alone. The validation was overwhelming, a balm to years of feeling isolated and resentful. But amidst the support, a few sharp-eyed commenters noticed inconsistencies in my anonymized details, small discrepancies that, while intended to protect my identity, inadvertently created cracks in my carefully constructed narrative. "Something doesn't add up here," one user wrote. "Parts of the story feel off." A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. The last thing I needed was to lose the credibility I had painstakingly built. Meanwhile, my phone continued its relentless barrage of calls and texts. The tone had shifted from anger to pleading. Mom's messages were now laced with guilt trips and veiled threats. Clara's were a dramatic mix of victimhood and outrage. "How could you do this to us, Liam? You're destroying our family." Dad remained ominously silent, his absence in the digital onslaught more terrifying than his usual rage. The digital storm soon bled into my real life. A barrage of angry emails flooded my work inbox, forwarded by Mom. Calls from unknown numbers became relentless. Then came the lawyer's letter, delivered with cold formality, defamation, damage to family reputation, demands for retraction. They were escalating. A wave of anxiety washed over me. Had I gone too far? I contacted a legal aid service, my voice trembling slightly as I recounted the events. The pro bono lawyer I spoke with, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Evans, listened intently. "You have documentation?" she asked, her tone businesslike. When I explained the extent of my records, a flicker of something akin to interest crossed her face. She advised me to remain silent and to cease all direct communication with my family. Following her advice, I went silent. My social media remained dark. I screened my calls. The silence seemed to enrage them further. More aggressive emails arrived. Clara even showed up unannounced at my apartment, her face tear-streaked, and her accusations loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You're a monster, Liam! You're tearing us apart!" Just when the pressure felt unbearable, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. The subject line simply read, "Let's talk." The sender was a name I hadn't seen in years. Uncle George, Dad's younger brother, a man who had always remained on the periphery of our family drama. Curiosity overriding my caution, I agreed to a call. His voice, when I finally heard it, was surprisingly gentle. He confessed that he had been following my anonymous Reddit posts. He had recognized the patterns, the subtle cues that mirrored his own strained relationship with our parents years ago. "They did the same to me, Liam," he admitted, his voice tinged with a weariness I understood all too well. He revealed that he had quietly distanced himself from the family years ago due to similar financial exploitation. But that wasn't all. Uncle George had information, crucial information about a family trust fund that I had never been aware of. He explained that a significant portion of the money my parents had been helping Clara with over the years had actually come from this trust, a trust that was partly in my name. "They've been using your inheritance, Liam," he stated plainly. "It's time you knew the truth." Armed with Uncle George's information, I contacted Ms. Evans again. Her initial concern transformed into focused determination as I laid out the new details. "This changes everything," she stated, her eyes gleaming with professional interest. She immediately launched an investigation, and within days, the truth began to unravel. Bank statements confirmed the existence of the trust fund and the consistent withdrawals made by my parents, ostensibly for Clara's various ventures. The lawyer's threats against me suddenly seemed hollow. Ms. Evans drafted a sharp cease and desist letter, outlining the potential legal ramifications for my parents' actions. The letter landed in their mailbox like a legal grenade. The frantic calls and texts resumed, but now there was a new element in their tone: fear. Clara's online persona, once a carefully curated image of a budding entrepreneur, began to crack under the weight of public scrutiny fueled by my anonymous posts and the growing whispers in our extended family circle. Her attempts to portray herself as a victim fell flat as more people started questioning her narrative. The incredible opportunities suddenly looked a lot like elaborate scams, funded by someone else's money. The united front my parents and Clara had presented at the reunion began to crumble. Accusations flew between them, Dad blaming Mom for not keeping Clara in check, Mom tearfully accusing Dad of enabling her, and Clara lashing out at both of them for ruining everything. Their carefully constructed facade of a happy family was disintegrating in real time. I watched the drama unfold from a distance, a detached observer of the chaos I had unleashed. Uncle George became my quiet confidant, offering updates and insights into the family's turmoil. He revealed that the extended family, once so quick to side with my parents and Clara, were now whispering amongst themselves, the discrepancies in Clara's stories and the sudden legal pressure raising doubts. "They're starting to see the truth, Liam," he told me during one of our calls. "It's slow, but it's happening." The lawyer's letter had a chilling effect. The flow of emergency requests for money abruptly stopped. Clara's social media, once a vibrant showcase of her supposed success, went silent. The Bloom Room, her dream boutique, remained just that. A dream, never to materialize on my dime. Weeks turned into a month. The aggressive calls and emails dwindled, replaced by a heavy, unsettling silence. My Reddit thread continued to garner comments, a mix of support, curiosity, and the occasional skeptical voice. I had become an accidental, online confessional, a focal point for stories of familial exploitation. But the victory felt hollow. The satisfaction I had initially anticipated never fully materialized. One evening, Uncle George called with a somber tone. "Your mother wants to talk, Liam," he said softly. "They're struggling." He explained that the legal pressure and the social ostracization were taking a toll. Their friends were distant. their community reputation tarnished. Clara's dream of the Bloom Room was dead in the water. A flicker of guilt stirred within me, quickly extinguished by the memory of years of their indifference to my own struggles. "What do they want, Uncle George?" I asked, my voice flat. He hesitated for a moment. "They want you to make it stop, Liam. They want their old life back." The thought of them struggling didn't evoke the sympathy they likely expected. Years of being their financial crutch had eroded any wellspring of familial obligation I might have once possessed. Their old life was built on my back. "Uncle George," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. Then, Uncle George revealed another layer to the story. The family home, the one they had always presented as their hard-earned achievement, was actually still under his name. He had quietly helped them with the initial purchase years ago and had never legally transferred the title. "They've been living in my house all this time, Liam," he confessed, a hint of bitterness in his tone. And then came the final twist. Uncle George, witnessing the years of exploitation and my parents' current predicament, had made a decision. "I'm changing the ownership, Liam," he stated firmly. "The house, it's yours now." A legal notice arrived at my parents' house a week later, stark and unforgiving. They had 30 days to vacate. The ensuing calls and texts were a desperate flurry of panic and outrage. "Liam, you can't do this. Where will we go? This is your family." Their pleas echoed the same entitled desperation I had heard for years, but this time my heart remained unmoved. I didn't respond. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't reply to their increasingly frantic messages. I imagined the chaos of them packing up their lives, the bewildered anger of Clara, the defeated silence of my father. A part of me felt a pang of something akin to sadness, but it was quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of liberation. A month later, I stood in front of their empty house. The windows were dark, the garden overgrown. The silence was heavy, absolute. It was over. My own apartment felt lighter, cleaner. The constant undercurrent of anxiety that had been my unwelcome companion for years had finally receded. I could breathe again. One evening, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a message from Clara. Just 2 words. "I'm sorry." A cynical part of me scoffed. Was this genuine remorse, or just another attempt at manipulation? I stared at the message for a long time, the words hanging in the digital void. I didn't reply. What was there to say? The years of damage couldn't be undone with 2 simple words. Life began to settle into a new rhythm. I focused on my work, reconnected with old friends, and even started pursuing hobbies I had long neglected. The weight I had carried for so long was finally gone. I was free. Months passed. My Reddit thread eventually faded into the archives, another cautionary tale in the vast landscape of online confessions. But for me, the lessons lingered. I had learned the importance of setting boundaries, the true cost of enabling toxic behavior, and the liberating power of saying no. The sweet taste of revenge had faded, replaced by a quiet sense of self-respect. One day, Uncle George called with news. My parents had moved to a smaller town, were trying to rebuild their lives, albeit with considerable difficulty. Clara was working a regular job, her entrepreneurial dreams seemingly on hold. There was no triumph in his voice, just a quiet acknowledgement of the consequences. Life wasn't a Hollywood movie. There wasn't a dramatic reconciliation scene or a tearful apology that magically healed all wounds. Instead, there was a quiet separation, a new normal forged in the aftermath of the storm. And in that quiet, I found a peace I had never known before. This wasn't just the end of a story, it was the beginning of mine. So, what do you think? Have you ever experienced anything similar? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If Liam's story resonated with you, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more compelling stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next upload.